Business owner opens safe to reveal truth, but the cleaner's unexpected reaction was amazing. James, bleary-eyed and weary from nights spent tossing and turning, could feel the weight of his father's legacy pressing down on him as he wiped the grease from his hands. The repair shop, a haven once, now felt more like a ticking clock, each second echoing the mounting deaths and corporate competition threatening to swallow it whole. Everything had changed since the big box store had moved in 2 towns over. His heart raced with the fear of failure. The familiar smell of oil and metal that once comforted him now only served as a reminder of what was at stake. It all started when he stumbled upon the old safe hidden behind a row of forgotten tools while cleaning and organizing the back room. It rusted and abandoned, called to him like a siren. After weeks of coaxing it open, anticipation built in his gut, echoing louder than the sound of his own breathing. When the door finally creaked ajar, he was met not just with wads of cash that could allow him to pay off his mounting debts, but with letters that unveiled his father's hidden past, dreams sacrificed on the altar of financial survival. But as the words absorbed into his anxious mind, he felt a fragile thread unwinding. Maria, the diligent cleaner of the shop, walked in on him, gasping, eyes wide as she gripped the doorframe. Her reaction startled him. It wasn't envy or greed he saw reflected back, but recognition wrapped in the rawness of shared struggle. Tears brimmed her eyes, the tension between them quaking in the air. "James," she said, her voice low but steady, I can see it, the weight of it." Torn between the revelation of his father's legacy and the desperate need to keep the shop afloat, he felt unease gripping at his insides like a vice. He hesitated. Here was a woman who understood hardship, a woman shaped by the rough hands of struggle and the desperate need to survive. They stood in silence, a shared understanding building between them, yet the question gnawed at him, relentless. Is the shop merely a bridge to financial security, or could it mean something more? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. James's heart raced as she shared her own story, growing up surrounded by dilapidated hopes, working multiple jobs, always loyal to those who extended a hand. He felt their collective tension mount, the cool metal of the safe contrasting with the warmth radiating from her vulnerable honesty. It was a crossroads he never anticipated, surrounded by the remnants of a life he had only begun to unravel. Would he cling to the safety of his father's broken dreams, or could he forge a new path with Maria, redefining what it meant to succeed? A knot twisted in his stomach, and as he looked into her eyes, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Yet, would he succumb to corporate greed or dare to grasp something more meaningful with her by his side? The silence loomed between them, heavy with unspoken truths, as the future of the shop, and perhaps their lives, teetered on the edge of an irreversible decision. What would he choose? The unanswered question hung thick in the air, a storm brewing with no clear resolution in sight. James's breathing steadied, but the urgency in his heart persisted. Maria's words echoed like a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. He was caught in a cycle of indecision, the very essence of his identity. A son, a business owner, a dreamer, teetering between duty and desire. What did he want? To save the shop for the sake of it, or to fulfill a deeper calling that honored his father's memory without being shackled by it? He shuffled his feet, the sound of metal scraped against concrete as he locked eyes with Maria. She was still there, her presence comforting yet electrifying, demanding a choice. "I found these letters," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They talk about dreams, about what my dad wanted before everything went wrong." Maria stepped closer, her expression one of quiet resolve. "You have the power to shape a different future, James. He may have sacrificed his dreams, but you don't have to." That truth sank deep within him. This wasn't just about money, it was about vision. James clenched the uncut keys of his father's past in one hand, the weight of the safe's contents in the other. The revelations ignited an ember of something powerful within him: determination. He could forge new paths unbounded by fear if he only dared to confront the ghosts of complacency and reliance on inherited legacy. A new idea sparked amid the haze of anxiety. What if I turned the shop into more than just a repair place? What if I offered workshops or classes for people looking to fix their own devices, teach them skills rather than just earning from repairs? His voice grew steadier as he spoke. The thought of engaging with his community, sharing knowledge instead of just counting transactions, began to light a fire in his veins. Maria's eyes sparkled with encouragement. You could create a community of support, empower people, just as your dad wanted, maybe renew his legacy in a way he never could. The notion brushed against his doubts. Could he really take such a leap? Yet, as he examined the dim corners of the shop, he could envision vibrant workshops, people eagerly learning. His father's tools could serve not only as instruments of repair, but as a means to uplift others. "This could revive the business," he muttered, his mind racing faster than he could think. "But what if no one shows up? What if I fail? What if this is just another pipe dream?" "Or it could be your success," Maria interjected gently. "Failing isn't worse than never trying, James. Your shops can breathe again, but only if you're willing to fight for it." Her words resonated deeply within him, stirring a sense of ownership over the shop that had been a mere obligation for too long. It was beginning to dawn on him that this could be the gift of freedom, not just for his business, but for himself. But taking that leap, diving into the unknown, challenged every instinct of caution he had honed. James felt the grip of fear loosening just a fraction. Still, a looming weight remained. Could he truly gather the community? Would anyone want to join him in this nascent venture? He realized that success would not be measured solely in profit. If he wanted to redefine his path, he needed to confront obstacles with resolve. "Maria, will you help me?" The question tumbled from his lips, revealing the vulnerability he felt. He could no longer navigate this storm alone. "Of course I will," she responded, a determined smile blossoming. "Together, we can rebuild." As they stood in the back room, hope mingling with resolve, he felt a sense of urgency build. The journey ahead would not merely be for him, but for those around him, those whose lives were intertwined with the threads of struggle and resilience. Where would this new path lead them? What lay in wait as they stepped into the unknown together? Uncertainty danced before him, a siren call to act. And with every beat of his racing heart, the next chapter of James's story began to take shape, waiting to be written. In the dim light of the shop, James could feel the weight of change pressing down on him. As he stood face to face with Maria, every echo of their earlier conversation ignited new fears within him. A mere idea of transformation felt monumental, yet the flicker of hope in his heart urged him forward. "What's the first step?" he asked, his voice steadier now, urging himself to sound more resolute than he felt. The uncut keys clanked together in his pocket, as if to remind him of the potential still locked away. Maria tilted her head, considering. "You need a plan. Naming the workshops will give it an identity, something people can latch onto. Maybe you could host a free introductory session to gauge interest." "Free?" James parroted incredulously, a sharpness of concern returning. "What about costs for supplies? I can't put any more money into this until I see what works. I can't afford to risk more debt." "But think of it as an investment in yourself," she countered, a glimmer of anticipation sparking in her eyes. People are more likely to come if they see you genuinely committed to offering value. Your father's legacy can be more than just a shop if you frame it that way. The thought unsettled him. The idea of putting himself out there, constantly exposed to judgment. Yet, beneath his apprehension, a surge of ambition whispered that perhaps he needed to embrace this vulnerability. Could he transform not just the shop, but his identity as a business owner? "Okay, then I'll host a free workshop," he conceded, feeling a rush of excitement mixed with dread. But what if I fail after that? What if no one even shows up? Then you learn. Every workshop is an opportunity, Maria encouraged, studying him with unwavering focus. Every person you reach counts, whether it's 1 or 10. You'll discover what resonates and adjust accordingly. James took a deep breath, realizing that the fear of failure had paralyzed him for too long. He had sought security, but true growth occupied a space of risk and uncertainty. "I think I'm ready to step outside that comfort zone. Let's do a trial run this weekend. We can create flyers, spread the word online," she suggested, her voice a steadying force. As they brainstormed ideas for the workshop, visualizing the equipment lineup and crafting lesson plans, a thrill began to weave through his thoughts. He could suddenly picture faces eager to learn, to engage with the tools his father had cherished so deeply. "That's it," he exclaimed, a notable excitement flashing through his eyes. "I'll share my dad's philosophy about repairs, not just fixing things, but understanding them." A moment of silence fell between them. Maria smiled warmly, recognizing the momentous shift taking place within him. In that breath, he saw the possibility of a connection beyond mere transactions. He could build something meaningful, a bridge from his past into action. However, a nagging concern surfaced just as quickly as the hope. What if someone shows up and scoffs at me? What if they think I'm a joke? "That's always a risk," Maria affirmed, her voice losing none of its warmth. "But remember this, you've lived through your father's legacy, and that created a foundation of knowledge. They won't see you as a joke, they'll see you as someone who wants to help people become self-reliant." James understood that confronting his fears meant embracing the very essence of his identity, a legacy intertwined with his own hopes. It became clear that this workshop would not just serve his business, but provide him a voice. He would have to stand strong against self-doubt, rising each time he fell. As he prepared to implement his plan, a sudden vulnerability struck him. For the first time, he felt ready to claim his identity, not just as a son or businessman, but as a community educator striving to inspire resilience. But why stop here? He could expand this plan even further. What if this could become more than weekly workshops? What if the shop evolved into a local hub for innovation and creativity? James glanced at Maria, a new urgency building as fresh ideas collided in his mind. The weight of expectation loomed. Could he really nurture this ambition into something larger? Little did he know that the moment he stepped into this uncharted territory, the biggest test of his resolve awaited him just around the corner, challenging everything he thought he knew about himself. The sun rose with palpable warmth on Saturday morning, illuminating the workshop's cluttered space where James had transformed the chaos into a semblance of order. Flyers lined the walls, bold letters proclaiming "Free Community Workshop this weekend" echoed in his mind, each word weighing heavily with potential and anxiety. How had he allowed himself to believe this was a good idea? As he shifted through the tools, mentally reviewing the lesson plan, doubt crept in again. Would people really show up? Were his father's teachings relevant to a world so enamored with fast replacements? Anxiety hummed beneath his skin as he arranged materials, trailing his fingers over the surfaces of the tools, each one a relic of the past, each one a reminder of his father's steadfast approach to life. As the hours crept close to the start time, he paced like a caged animal, grappling with an impulsive urge to cancel. The risk of failure pressed down on him, whispers of self-doubt spiraling within. James took a deep breath, reminding himself that this workshop was not solely about him. It was about sharing knowledge, connecting people to skills that could empower them. The weight shifted slightly as he focused on that purpose. When the door swung open, a rush of fresh air filled the shop, and in walked a handful of curious faces, each with their own stories, their own lives to fix and mend. James felt a rush of warmth, a spark ignited as he realized this was real. He was not merely standing in his father's old shop anymore. He was stepping into a role he hadn't known he could occupy. "Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're here," he said. "Today, we're not just about repairs. We're here to understand why things break and how we can fix them, not just mechanically, but philosophically." Some in the room mirrored his uncertainty, while others leaned forward, eager to absorb every word. James began with the grounding principles his father had enforced: patience, observation, and understanding. The more he spoke, the more he began to feel himself radiating confidence. He illustrated concepts through demonstrations, walking them through a simple project that anyone, no matter their skill level, could follow. Questions from his participants flowed freely. Each question forced him to dig deeper into his understanding, challenging him to translate his father's teachings into relevant insights for those eager to learn. Despite the tremors of anxiety still simmering beneath the surface, his passion began to shine through. Yet, at a pivotal moment, a voice cut through the room, puncturing the air. "So what gives you the right to teach us about this? You look like you've never faced a problem in your life." James met the gaze of a young man standing at the back, arms crossed. It was an elegant challenge, and the heat of embarrassment threatened to burn him. How could he confront this confrontation while staying true to the journey he was undertaking? His gut instinct told him to deflect, retreating into the shell of self-defense. But instead, he stood tall, questioning his own authority in this moment. "I may not have all the answers, but I've stood in the wake of failure, learning what it takes to fix not just the things around me, but also the parts of myself," he replied, surprising himself. The room stilled for a moment, absorbing his unexpected vulnerability. James could feel a shift, as if the question had presented an uncharted territory not just for him, but for the others as well. A shared experience of confronting individual insecurities. By the end of the workshop, he had steered the conversation into discussions not only about tools and repairs, but about fears, aspirations, and personal growth. As he watched participants leave, energized and engaged, a realization washed over him. Teaching had not only connected him to others, but illuminated his own capabilities. This was just the beginning. His fears were now raw materials for growth. But there was more to confront. Rumblings from within stirred uncertainty that this was only a temporary reprieve from self-doubt. He wondered what the implications of facing genuine conflict with not just himself, but others would reveal. And as he tidied up the shop, anticipation and trepidation hung in the air like a low fog. He sensed another challenge approaching. What realities awaited him outside his comfort zone as he delved deeper into this newfound identity? Monday morning arrived, bringing with it a fresh wave of anxiety as James prepared for the second workshop. With the sun filtering through the shop's windows, illuminating the remnants of the previous weekend's energy, he scrutinized the supplies laid out before him. The air felt thick with unspoken expectations, especially his own. As he adjusted the organization of tools on the workbench, his thoughts drifted to the young man who had questioned his authority on Saturday. The sting of that moment lingered like a shadow, forcing him to confront the reality that vulnerability also exposed him to scrutiny. This second workshop felt different, more daring. How could he inspire others while questioning his own competence? He repeatedly practiced his opening lines, attempting to find a balance between his newfound confidence and the honesty that seemed to resonate with participants. The essence of the workshop, he realized, lay in more than simply imparting knowledge. It revolved around creating an opportunity for open dialogue and connection. "James, are you ready?" A voice interrupted his spiraling thoughts. It was Lucy, A young woman had attended the first session. Her presence felt grounding. She had ventured back, curious to delve deeper into the skills he had hinted at previously. "Yeah, I think so," he responded, rubbing his palms on his jeans, a nervous habit. With just a few minutes before the start time, a knot of fear threatened to tighten. What if no one else showed? What if the same questions arose, exposing his insecurities yet again? As participants trickled in, James wiped his brow and felt the familiar flicker of nervousness resonate within him. Several new faces joined Lucy's, their expressions uncertain yet hopeful. He instantly felt a pang of solidarity. Each person held their own fears and challenges, just as he did. This shared experience formed an invisible connection, empowering him to push through his doubts. "Welcome back," he greeted them, the tremulous quality of his voice morphing into acceptance. "Today, we will tackle not just more projects, but the values that anchor those fix-its in life." With the second workshop underway, he guided them through a series of hands-on tasks, but intertwined the mechanics with metaphors that reflected their daily struggles. Patience with tools, the discipline in applying them, the resilience required when facing setbacks. They laughed, shared stories, and helped one another, creating a supportive atmosphere that drove him to dig deep into his reserves of understanding. Just as the session reached a climactic point, another challenge arose. Lucy, who had been silently absorbing everything, suddenly stood up with a spark in her eyes. "You talk about resilience, but how do we manage our failures? What if we break something we can't fix?" Her question hung in the air, a raw sincerity that pierced through the momentum of positive engagement. James felt the spotlight shift to him once more, pressing the same doubts to the surface. The fear of inadequacy rushed back. "Rarely is anything irreparable, Lucy," he began slowly. "But the truth is, sometimes we break things beyond our repair, be it an item or a part of ourselves. It's in those moments we confront our limitations." This admission was liberating. He realized that teaching wasn't about presenting a flawless narrative. It was about engagement, listening, and permitting vulnerability within his lessons. With Lucy's question, James was reminded of his mission. He had initially hoped to restore others' possessions, but found himself guiding them towards personal restoration. As the workshop wrapped up, a profound sense of accomplishment washed over him. He had faced his self-doubt, a small but significant victory. But a new tumult brewed within him. That connection to vulnerability opened him to unexpected fears. What if, in these revelations, he uncovered truths he wasn't prepared to face about himself? As he cleared the workshop, a sense of anticipation fluctuated in the air. He was inching closer to something potentially transformative, standing on the threshold of not just teaching others, but learning from the friction of honesty and vulnerability. What deeper question would arise in his next workshop? And would he have the courage to explore it? The afternoon sun slanted through the dusty windows as James prepared for the next workshop. He could feel the weight of his previous session clinging to him like a second skin. The exhilaration of vulnerability mixed with doubt tugged at his insides, a reminder that each interaction deepened the chasm between who he was and who he hoped to become. As each participant filed in, James surveyed their expressions. Some showed eagerness, while others bore the telltale signs of anxiety that mirrored his. Did they view him as a guide or merely a damaged vessel echoing back their fears? Every time he observed someone lingering at the edges, scanning the room, he felt that familiar knot tighten in his stomach. "Welcome back," he said, consciously grounding himself in his role. "Let's dive deeper into our explorations today." He tightly gripped the edges of the workbench, hoping to anchor himself in the flow of their interactions. Today's theme revolved around confrontation, not just of physical challenges with the tools, but the internal battles each person fought daily. As he launched into demonstrations, his anxiety faded momentarily. With each passing task, his focus sharpened. He guided them not just to fix broken items, but to face their broken parts. Think about that one thing you've always put off, he encouraged, passion bleeding into his voice. What's the worst that could happen if you confront it? He challenged them to voice their fears, yet he noticed his own pulse quicken as the question echoed back to him. Fear of failure? Someone replied, and James nodded, the truth of it weighing heavily. Maybe it's about accepting that some things will break beyond repair. Much like our hearts, he found himself saying, the resonance of his words hitting harder than he anticipated. There was a collective hush as they processed the sentiment, and a current of recognition pulsed around the room. Lucy, his anchor, raised her hand again, her expression thoughtful. What if we confront something we can't control? Do we just accept it? The question reverberated through him. A piece of vulnerability slipped through the cracks he had worked so hard to cement. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means recognizing there's power in acknowledging what is beyond our grasp. But offering grace to ourselves in those moments, that's crucial. James's words landed like pebbles in water, sending ripples through the group. Was he speaking to them or to himself? The honesty in his self-exploration felt palpable. He caught glimpses of familiar faces reflecting recognition, pain, and a flicker of hope. This collective discovery was transforming their relationship, forging a sense of community that teetered on the edge of his comfort zone. As they engaged in deeper dialogues, addressing failures and hurdles, he felt stitches being sewn into the fabric of their shared experience. The workshop was no longer just about the mechanics of fixing broken things. It had become a collaborative journey of healing. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was a churning tide of unresolved feelings. The last question landed, heavy and unyielding. Someone asked, how do we build resilience in the face of constant setbacks? James felt the gravity of that inquiry settle inside him. The weight of his previous failures threatened to crush the newfound bravery within. Instead of offering platitudes, he chose to reflect. Sometimes it takes building a protective armor while allowing the heart to remain exposed. Resilience isn't about never falling, it's about the courage to rise again. As he observed their thoughtful reactions, he realized his mission had shifted. It wasn't solely about restoring furniture or guiding them through projects. It was about creating a narrative where transformation could blossom through authentic experiences. Yet behind the elation of connection and growth, a lingering question persisted. Was he prepared to delve deeper into his own fears and barriers in order to lead them through theirs? When the workshop concluded, a mixture of relief and trepidation settled over him. While he navigated the aftermath of their encounters, he couldn't shake the feeling that a larger challenge was waiting in the wings, one that might force him to confront the very essence of his identity as both a teacher and a learner. As he packed up, a young participant approached him. James, do you really believe in your own words? The question struck like a hammer hitting steel, igniting a raw urgency within him. How could he answer without revealing his lingering doubts? What lay ahead? Would he find the courage to turn that inquiry inward and truly confront the armor he had constructed to protect himself? James stood at the workbench long after the last participant had left, the echoes of their conversations reverberating in his mind. Guilt and self-doubt gnawed at him. He had encouraged others to confront their fears, yet here he was, dodging the very essence of his truth. The impact of the young participant's question loomed larger by the second. Did he truly believe in his own words? He wrestled with the implications of honesty. What did it cost to abandon the facade of confidence? He shuffled through the clutter of the workshop, his fingers grazing over unfinished projects, a table here, a chair there. Each piece captured remnants of his journey, symbols of progress that felt all too distant from the emotional hurdles he faced. The workshop had devolved into a mirror, reflecting not merely their struggles, but his, cracking the veneer of his self-perception. Compelled to explore beyond the surface, he recalled stories of his earlier days in the business, when the dream felt alive and vibrant, untainted by the weight of expectations or constant foresight of failure. In those moments, he wasn't just a workshop leader. He was a creator who dared to embrace imperfections. Yet, here he was now. Doubts swelled like a tide, threatening to erode that creative spirit. The challenge ahead wasn't just the act of leading others. It was about surrendering to the very truth had imparted upon them. He found himself asking what fears he had stowed away, the fears he had fed while trying to protect himself from emotional vulnerability. The air hung heavy around him. It was one thing to guide others in their healing. It was another to navigate his self-discovery. Contemplating all this, he closed his eyes, breathing deeply, trying to harness courage ignored for far too long. It was time to confront. He decided to undertake a personal challenge, as he had encouraged his participants to do. Explore the deepest facets of his own fears. He pulled out a blank journal. His original intention had been for participant reflections. Now it sat empty, beckoning him like a compass in a fog. James flipped it open and began to write, the familiar motion grounding him. "What am I afraid of?" he scrawled, feeling resistance swell. "What if I fail them? What if I fail myself?" The room grew darker as he poured out thoughts, each line uncovering stories buried under layers of self-critique. The energy shifted, and an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. With every fear written, he unearthed glimpses of strength, pieces of resilience he hadn't truly acknowledged. Failures were merely stepping stones, the jagged edges shaping his path toward understanding. The words flowed, even the painful ones. "What if I'm not enough?" faded alongside "What if I can be more?" He found himself lost in the rhythm of ink against paper, crafting a narrative that positioned struggles as a formative part of his growth. This wasn't just writing, it was an excavation of self, with every revelation offering glimmers of hope. Just as clarity began to take root, a soft tap on the door startled him. He looked up to find Lucy, her brows knit in curiosity. "I didn't think you'd still be here," she began, stepping into the light of the workshop, her presence a stabilizing force. James hesitated, the journal resting limply on his thigh. Should he share his journey of introspection with her? Would it deepen their bond, or would it show how far he still had to go? Lucy's eyes flickered to the open page, and the silence hung thick between them. "Are you okay?" Her voice was gentle but probing, demanding honesty. He weighed his response, instinctively retreating into the armor that had protected him for so long. But this wasn't just about him. It was about cultivating a space for authenticity. The moment beckoned, a chance to lean into vulnerability rather than shy away from it. He took a breath, one that drew from the well of courage he'd begun to uncover. "Actually, I'm not okay," he admitted, feeling the weight of truth lifting from his chest. Their gaze locked, and in that moment, he saw not judgment but a shared understanding. It was an invitation into the depths of mutual exploration. "What do you mean?" she asked. As the door creaked open to deeper dialogue, he felt a stir of anticipation. The question now stood tall. How deep was he willing to go in this newfound journey of self-acceptance? The path ahead was uncertain, but one truth began to unfold. He had to meet his fears head-on in order to truly lead. With a determination ignited, he ventured, "How about we explore this together?" The enormity of such a decision thundered in the air, leaving them both teetering on the brink of uncovering greater truths. What awaited them in the depths of their exchange? Would they emerge transformed or face unforeseen vulnerabilities? James felt the weight of his words hang in the air, each syllable hanging like a fine mist before dissipating into the warmth of Lucy's unwavering gaze. He could see the glimmer of understanding reflected in her eyes, an acknowledgement of the battle he had begun to wage within himself. It helped diffuse the tension knotted in his chest, but also kindled an unsettling excitement about what lay ahead. With a deep breath, he leaned against the workbench, forcing himself to stay present. He hadn't anticipated exploring his vulnerabilities with anyone, let alone with Lucy. And yet, the urge to share his journey grew too compelling to ignore. I've built this image of confidence and resilience, but behind it, I feel lost. When I listen to others, I connect with their struggles, but when it's time to reflect inward, the doubts creep back in. I've encouraged them to be brave, but I haven't been true to myself. Lucy nodded, her silence an invitation to continue. Her presence felt safe, yet the openness hung like an unsheathed sword above them. People expect me to be the steady hand, the mentor with all the answers, yet I often feel like a fraud. The admission tasted bitter, but liberating. I'm terrified of letting them down, more so than I am of facing my own inadequacies. James, I think admitting that is a strong first step, Lucy responded gently. You're human. You're allowed to feel uncertain. He met her gaze again, battling the vulnerability that threatened to consume him. But I'm supposed to inspire them. There's a fear in facing them when I can't even face myself. If I crumble, what will happen to their trust in me? Your honesty could be what makes your leadership stronger. Maybe they need to see you as someone who's still evolving, just like them. The conviction in her voice wrapped around him like a lifeline. Isn't that a part of growth, sharing the struggles as much as the triumphs? Something shifted inside him, a familiar wall of self-doubt cracking under the weight of her perspective. It hadn't occurred to him that revealing his struggles could foster greater connection rather than diminish his authority. He felt a rush of clarity, a flicker of resolve igniting within him. Perhaps I need to redefine my leadership. Instead of portraying unwavering confidence, I can share the process of overcoming doubts. That may deepen their experience. They both remained silent, weighing the implication of this revelation. James pictured the workshop sessions differently, imagining discussions where he could encourage dialogue on vulnerability. But then unease snaked back into the corners of his mind. What if they see me as weak instead? The last thing I want is to be dismissed as incapable. Strength isn't the absence of weakness. It's about owning both. It's how you navigate through it, Lucy countered. What matters is how you handle the fears and still support them. He considered this, pulling away from his tightly wound thoughts, letting her words resonate. Also, I fear that being open might paint a target on my back. Critics will see the vulnerability as an opportunity to undermine me. Lucy's expression shifted, determination surfacing in her voice. Then it's a test of those who truly want to support you versus those who thrive on skepticism. Isn't that also a valuable lesson you could share? This ignited a flicker of excitement. He could shift the narrative, positioning vulnerability as a form of strength rather than a weakness. Each challenge could become a discussion point for growth, an invitation not only for himself, but for those who followed his journey. How do I start? He pondered aloud, excitement intertwining with uncertainty. She smiled, and in that moment he saw a clear path emerge, albeit obscured by the unpredictable terrain of emotional vulnerability. You could hold a session centered on authenticity. Share your fears on stage. Make it a guided discussion where everyone opens up. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Start small, just like you did with your writing. James nodded, the idea settling in the corners of his mind. He could see it clearly now, raw, intimate, and impactful. Real connections were forged through shared struggles, and he wouldn't just lead, he would walk beside them, learning together. As they wrapped up their discussion, a realization washed over him. He had the power to create an environment where everyone, including himself, could grow. Yet a part of him still hesitated, grappling with the fear of taking that first step. "Are you ready to be vulnerable together?" Lucy asked softly, her eyes searching his. The question hung like a challenge before him, lurking with the promise of transformation. He had always taught others to take leaps of faith. Now it was his turn. "Let's do it," he answered, resolve solidifying. "Let's embrace the uncomfortable." Little did he know that stepping forward into vulnerability would lead to deeper struggles and perhaps even darker revelations than he had anticipated. What waited behind that threshold of honesty? The answer could redefine everything he thought about leadership and himself. As they exchanged a moment of silent understanding, James sensed that the journey ahead would not only test his resolve, but could open doors he'd long been too afraid to approach. James stood at the edge of the workshop, the sun casting long shadows across the floor, illuminating the dust motes swirling in the air. Feel the anticipation humming through him like a live wire, the weight of his decision pressing down, but also offering an unexpected thrill. Today was the first group session where he would practice this new approach, inviting vulnerability as a strength instead of a weakness. He took a deep breath, the scent of polished wood and fresh paint mingling in his senses. As the participants began to trickle in, he felt a cocktail of nerves and excitement mix inside him, akin to the haze of a new project just taking shape. He had envisioned this moment countless times, yet nothing prepared him for the reality of it. When they settled into a loose circle, James looked around, taking in the familiar faces. These were his colleagues, his mentees, people who had looked to him for guidance and support. The thought of sharing his struggles felt risky, exposing. But as Lucy had said, it was time to own both his strengths and weaknesses. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of vulnerability. "Today, I want to try something different. I want us to talk openly about our struggles rather than just our successes." The initial silence felt charged with apprehension. He could see their eyes searching his face, seeking confirmation that he was sincere. He forged ahead. "I'll go first. I often feel like an imposter in my role. The pressure to appear resolute and confident weighs heavy on me, and I worry that I let my fears overshadow my abilities." A murmur of surprise echoed around the circle. James held his breath, waiting for the response. Would they see him as weak? Would they be turned off by this honesty? Finally, Sarah spoke up, her voice trembling slightly. "I think a lot of us feel that way. I've always looked up to you as someone who had it all figured out, James. Hearing you say that makes me feel less alone." James's heart swelled, a mixture of relief and warmth washing over him. Maybe this was the connection he had been craving, not just for himself, but for everyone seated around him. He encouraged Sarah to continue, and she spoke about her own insecurities, her fears of failure, and the pressures of expectation. One by one, others began to share. It was a cascade of confessions, fears about career choices, anxiety over public speaking, struggles with achieving a healthy work-life balance. James listened, engaged, each story revealing the layers of human experience that existed beneath the surface of professionalism. The room felt lighter with each shared burden. As they continued, something profound began to take shape amid the shared vulnerabilities. An atmosphere of trust blossomed, uniting them through their common struggles. James realized that the act of being vulnerable was not a revelation of weakness, but rather a challenge to connect and grow. Yet, as the session wore on, James felt a flicker of doubt intrude his thoughts. What if he had overshared? What if the collective airing of their fears inadvertently placed him in a vulnerable position that weakened his authority? The nagging voice grew louder, questioning the underlying motives of this openness. Had he done the right thing? At that moment, Mark, one of his most outspoken critics, spoke up unexpectedly. "Actually, I respect you more for this. It's refreshing to see a leader not just preach about bravery, but actually demonstrate it. You're putting your fears on the table, and that takes guts." The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like a soft blanket. James felt a rush of gratitude, not just for Mark's acknowledgement, but for every person who had chosen to share that day. He gathered his thoughts, seeing the session as an unexpected turning point rather than a risk. "Thank you, all of you. This was a step forward, not just for me, but for us all. By embracing our vulnerabilities, we create a stronger community." Yet, as he concluded, a gnawing hesitation remained in him. Was this newfound connection powerful enough to withstand the storms of doubt that might arise when the next challenges beckoned? As the participants left, their animated conversations mingling with the fading light, James felt an urge to solidify this momentum, but wrestled with the fear of what lay ahead. What would it take to transform this vulnerable sharing into an ongoing journey of mutual empowerment? Would he be able to sustain the trust they had begun to build, even as they faced inevitable setbacks in the future? The shadows deepened around him as he stood amidst the remnants of their discussion, a single thought echoing in his mind. Embracing vulnerability wasn't the end of the journey, it was just the beginning. Days turned into weeks, and as James continued leading his workshops, each session added new layers to his understanding of leadership, connection, and self-acceptance. The before and after contrast was undeniable. He no longer merely stood behind a workbench as a solitary figure. He transformed into a guide, fostering conversations that embraced vulnerability while encouraging personal growth through the shared struggles they collectively confronted. Each workshop further solidified his commitment to authenticity. He shared not just successes, but also stumbles. His journey of overcoming self-doubt and fear of failure resonated deeply with his participants. It was no longer about him alone. It was about building a community where resilience was cultivated rather than merely spoken about. The initial anxiety about exposing his weaknesses had evolved into opportunities for deeper connections. On the morning of the 5th week, a personal milestone awaited him. He stood in front of a full house of participants, nerves mingling with excitement. Today, they were to explore the theme of ownership, how admitting past shortcomings could serve as stepping stones towards creating a brighter future. As he looked at their eager faces, he felt an unexpected empowerment coursing through him. He opened with a familiar honesty, reflecting on moments when he faltered, not just as a business owner, but as an individual.
"I once believed facing difficulties made me weak," he admitted, his voice steady. "But now I know it's through facing them that I have strengthened not only my character, but my connection with others." Engaging discussions erupted, illuminating collective stories of struggle. Lucy, now a prominent figure in the workshops, shared, "I learned it's okay to embrace uncertainty. Now I approach challenges as opportunities rather than threats." The dialogue flourished, and at the end of the session, James felt the radiant energy shift, transitioning from anxiety to fulfillment. It was evident to him that this was more than a series of workshops. He had created an environment brimming with mutual support and trust. As he closed the session, a wave of reflection washed over him. "I've witnessed not only you all growing, but myself evolving as well. This journey, my journey, has reminded me that growth happens amidst uncertainty and vulnerability." The applause that followed felt not just like validation, but recognition of the collaborative effort they had undertaken. Finally embracing this role of educator, leader, and confidant, James took one last look around the workshop. The faces that filled the room no longer represented just individuals. They were companions on a shared path of growth, pursuing personal and collective resilience. He felt grounded in their commitment to engage in this journey together, each of them ready to face the hurdles that awaited with determined fortitude. Later that day, as he began to tidy up the workshop, he reflected on how far he had come. The daunting weight of his father's legacy still lingered, but it no longer paralyzed him. Instead, it fueled his drive. He had transformed the family business not merely into a repair shop, but into a thriving community hub where knowledge and support flourished. Realizing that he had created something lasting, a space where vulnerability and strength coexisted, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Not just for the success of the workshops, for the recognition that his worth was not defined by perfection, but by honest connection. Through this transformative journey, James had emerged with solid confidence and a newfound understanding of competence. He had succeeded in redefining his position, not only as a business owner, but as a person capable of guiding others through uncharted waters. His heart swelled with gratitude and resolve. The narrative had shifted, painting a clear picture of who he had become. An empowered leader who stood tall, united with those around him through authenticity and purpose. In this moment of clarity, James smiled broadly. His father's tools now served a dual purpose, reminding him of his past while equipping him for a future he had forged on his own terms. The journey ahead sparkled with the promise of endless possibilities. Make no mistake, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel for the next exclusive emotional stories that will fuel your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement makes all the difference. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your thoughts matter. And don't wait even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who desperately need to see this conclusion. Now more than ever, your engagement shapes our community. Don't miss this chance to join the movement.